Okay, so while the questions are coming in, they're passing cards around. I have a couple questions. In the,
Would you mind getting back? I'm sorry, for you to take questions.
write it on a card.
Write it on the card and pass it forward. Because he said he'd come back. I know. Write it on the card, please, and pass it forward.
In the United States, when we've come up with a number of approaches to dealing with global warming, but they get nowhere because of the politics. Our leadership is not able to do things that are, could be win-win solutions. We have maybe it's a naive and it's an illusion, but we have this sense, I at least do, that in China, if the leadership wanted to do something about fossil fuel emissions, they could just do it, assuming it's technically feasible. Is that an illusion, or is that a real accurate portrayal of the capacity of the Chinese leadership?
Yeah, I think in every country the political capital is limited, and whether they're going to choose to do this or that, and in China, I think the economic growth definitely is trumping other issues, and it's a matter of considered a matter of legitimacy and all this. So keeping up the economic growth is taken as very important, and when it comes to local government, they definitely, most of them still put GDP growth rate ahead of environmental protection. It's just not just matters to the review of their performance, to the promotion opportunities, but also increasingly the money and power goes hand in hand, just like in many parts of the world, and so the vested interest is building up, and it's very, very difficult to I would say to change that when it comes to this whole big issue of climate change. If we only, I think, come up from the carbon perspective, it won't be quite easy to cross the message in this country. It won't be quite easy to cross message in our part of the world as well. And when you come to the global level, it leads to what we saw in Copenhagen when we got stuck there, developing world, versus the developed, and there's all this, especially China, America got stuck there, and but now there has been some very interesting local dynamic going on. The local pollution, Ovo mentioned about this, but Ovo, I feel somewhat differently. You I don't know how much time you're going to spend in Beijing, but as a resident, I really feel very strongly, about this. I worried about my child, and many of us worried about our children. And with the data, we understand that its surrounding regions got even worse air quality, but they just, for a long time don't know about that. And now, with the push for transparency, from the beginning of this year, we started getting real-time disclosure every hour for 74 cities. And now 114 cities in our country can give people access to information on real-time monitoring data. We can check on our cell phone with the app, 35 monitoring stations. But unfortunately, most of the days, it's not healthy for outdoor exercises, for outdoor activities. We as adults, we can stop, we can, turn to indoor activities, but our children are still pushed in schools, for outdoor exercises and sports class, playing football, we all feel really painful. But with this new kind of a revelation disclosure, finally, the government decided to create emergency response plans saying that the school could stop outdoor exercises. And you may have learned that just a couple of weeks ago, we got some cities even stopped the whole school during the bad smoggy days in North China. And of course, it's very helpful to prevent further exposure to these hazards. But people are not satisfied just to learn, which day I'm going to put on face mask or lock my children indoor. It's not enough. So people demand for solutions, for actions, and the government eventually responded to that with, by changing, by revising again and again, with ever more, increasingly more ambitious action plans. And so far, the new version, the most updated version, stating that in areas surrounding Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei, three provincial level areas, the coal consumption must be reduced by 80 million tons a year. 80 million tons of coal. So just thinking about this is probably bigger than most in the consumption of most of the countries in the world. And just thinking about how, if we can come up with something integrated, an integrated solution, there's a good way to do it or bad way. Bad way is to push all these coal power plants to, further places, to build that in Inner Mongolia, for example. That won't be a good solution. That helps local pollution control, but, when it comes to global level, it's not very helpful. So we need to integrate it, but this created a huge dynamic in our country. To start it with talking about a cap, a peak of our coal consumption. And then with that, there's definitely no way to find alternatives to power all this inefficient industry. So we need to restructure our industry. So the disclosure of the finest particles have actually led to such a snowballing effect. There's a new dynamic in our country. If we can seize that moment, China is taking action, and if we work together on that, so just talking about the carbon issue, I don't think that's gonna, lead to such a kind of change. But with the local dynamic, in your country, move to natural gas, so you move forward as well. So I think there's a chance for both of us to come up with some to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to diminish the hazards of the pollution in China, but just to say that I think it can be fixed, whereas I'm not sure about climate change. And as to your question, about people like to imagine China's a nice little dictatorship. They just wave wands and things get done. It's not that easy. They do have better capacity to execute policy, but then anybody would have better possibilities of executing policy than our own national government. I should say that here in California, things are not so unhopeful. In fact, I am working with Governor Brown now to write for him in the state of California a concrete plan for how to collaborate with a province in China to create a model for resolving some issues relating to climate change. That's very hopeful. So I feel like I don't want to go to Washington. Useless, hopeless. But here in California, actually, there are some prospects to actually do something.
Okay, thank you. This is a question for Orville, and I'm not sure. Well, I'll ask it. I think it'll be fun. Why would Vietnam go to war with China over the Mekong any more than Mexico would go to war with the U.S. over the Colorado River?
Well, Vietnam, the Mekong flows out down at the bottom of Vietnam, and the whole of the Mekong Delta is in Vietnam. There are millions of people dependent upon it. I don't know, they went to war in 1979 over basically nothing. You could imagine that the water question might actually be a real national interest, which could put two nations at each other's throat.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Mahjong, this is a question for you. What could the U.S. do besides confer a Goldman Award to make your job easier?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we can do together. I mean, on a global level, obviously, we for quite some time use each other as an excuse, and I think we need to change that. With the new dynamic, we could change that. And then back on the issue of all this, what I talk about are good dynamic going on. Having said that, enforcement going to be really challenging. How to implement such a plan? It will really affect a lot of interests. Hebei province alone need to cut their coal consumption by 40 million, and that means that their iron steel capacity need to be reduced by 1/3 of that need to be cancelled and abolished, and that means 60 million tons of coal of iron steel capacity. How many factories, and employment and all this fiscal income, it's going to impact them. So there are a lot of, difficulties to implement this. But as I highlighted the fact that increasingly all this data would be available, and of course, not just they will not just stay, hopefully not just stay in China. We generate all this data, we compile the data into this platform, and from next year, I would say that all these major emitters, in China, 65% of our air emission comes from just a number of 4,189 factories. Can you believe that? It's just that number, and if we can, from next year, hopefully, many of them would give hourly disclosure. Some of the provinces started trying that, and we are capturing all this hourly data. And you know what? Some of them break the discharge standards almost like every hour. So if we can, behind that, what is going on? I mentioned about our new site, which can, allow the investors to pull out this data of listed companies, and we also going to allow people to understand who are the investors, who are the shareholders of all these polluting factories, who are the banks which provide the long-term loans to them. Of course, most of them are Chinese. We're going to push them, but there are also these major investors from US, from Europe, and all of this, just like the brands. So if we care, if we do care about this issue, then, we can do something on this part of the world. When we engage with the investors, saying that, look, do you want to know how your money powered the dirtiest some factories in China? And of course, they're not just generating local pollution, they're also major carbon emitters in the world. But unfortunately, quite some of them say that, sorry, we don't know, we don't want to know, we just care about return of investment. So we cannot engage them successfully. So we are looking for partners in this part of the world to say that, if we all care, then we can do something like that. So I hope that that we can, seize the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. David has asked me to ask you to make the answer to this next one very short, because we're short on time.
Sorry.
And it's kind of a cruel thing to make you answer briefly, but here's the question. Does China have a population policy moving forward into the future? What are its goals? And is it necessary to have such a policy if it's going to deal with global warming and with air and water quality?
When it comes to population policy, China has for all these years, having imposed a very stringent, population policy. And I have to say that this generation of Chinese actually, sacrifice a lot for that. People could have all kind of thinking about this, but the matter of fact, one real impact is that for it does reduce several hundred million, possible, population by several hundred million. So, but now China is aging very, very quickly, and there's many, professionals started, arguing that this policy is going to cause a lot of huge social problems if we don't change on time. But we again have vested interest, agencies which are quite still resist this. So the debate has just get started, and I guess we need to hit the balance.
Orville, do you want to add anything?
Well, it's a very difficult dilemma for China. You know, 1964, China had half as many people as it does now. At that point, Mao Zedong declared China's population its atom bomb, and it exploded. And since cooler heads have prevailed, they have this very draconian one family, one child policy. And yet, now they're having this huge balloon of elderly people with inadequate younger people to support them. So it's an incredibly difficult problem that is going to cause some real dislocations down the line.
Okay, let's thank our speakers.